BRICS summit gives Putin a chance to show Russia not isolated. Lydia Kelly and Katya Golubkova, Reuters.com. Russian President Vladimir Putin, front, delivers a speech at the gala concert of the 15th International Tchaikovsky competition at the Moscow Conservatory, Russia, July 2, 2015. The BRICS emerging economies will launch a development bank at a summit this week, which President Vladimir Putin hopes will help reduce Western dominance of world financial institutions and show Moscow is not isolated. At a meeting in the remote Russian city of Ufa, originally a fortress built on the orders of Tsar Ivan the Terrible, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa also aim to put the last touches to a $100 billion contingency currency reserves pool. The BRICS account for a fifth of the world's economic output and 40% of its population. The pool and new development bank, with an initial $50 billion in capital, are central to their efforts to reshape the Western-dominated financial system. Quote, "At this meeting, we will make operational our two biggest institutions, which is key for us to advance as a group and learn more from each other," said a Brazilian official involved in the preparations for the meeting. Quote, "Nobody thought that was going to be possible a year ago when we ratified the proposals." The official asked not to be named, as he is not allowed to speak publicly about the two-day summit starting on Wednesday in Ufa, nearly 1,170 kilometers, 730 miles southeast of Moscow. For Putin, whose focus has shifted to the emerging economies and especially Asia, since the West imposed sanctions on Moscow over its role in the Ukraine crisis, the summit is also a chance to show the West that Russia can get along fine without it. Quote, "The BRICS, in addition to their economic and pragmatic agenda, have become an influential factor in world politics," Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said last week. He denied the five countries' efforts to join forces were aimed against anyone else and praised their important stabilizing role in international affairs. Slow in coming, the unity of the BRICS nations is important for Putin in his standoff with the West over Ukraine, especially as Russia suffered the symbolic blow of being suspended from the group of 8 industrial powers over its seizure of the Crimea region. But independent foreign policy experts say the BRICS group is still a long way from achieving its main goals, and Russia ties with China remain less developed than Moscow would like. Progress on the new development bank, first proposed in 2012, has also been slow. At last year's BRICS summit in Brazil, it was agreed the headquarters would be in Shanghai. But China ratified the bank only last week, and it is not expected to be operational until next year. Its capital still has to be rated to issue debt. Other emerging markets, such as Turkey, Mexico, Indonesia, and Nigeria, could join as partners at a later date. The contingency reserves pool is expected to start operating immediately to help members if they are hit by a sudden exodus of foreign capital. The summit coincides with a meeting in Ufa of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, SCO, a security bloc grouping China, Russia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, and Uzbekistan, which India and Pakistan are set to join. Putin is also expected to hold talks with Iranian President Hassan Rouhani in Ufa. Iran has observer status in the SCO. U.S. wakes up to new Silk World Order. Pen name, Pepe Escobar. Informationclearinghouse.info. May 16, 2015, Information Clearinghouse, Asia Times. The real masters of the universe in the U.S. are no weathermen, but arguably they're starting to feel which way the wind is blowing. History may signal it all started with this week's trip to Sochi, led by their paperboy, Secretary of State John Kerry, who met with Foreign Minister Lavrov. And then, with President Putin, arguably a visual reminder, clicked the bells for the real masters of the universe. The PLA marching in Red Square on Victory Day, side by side with the Russian military. Even under the Stalin-Mao alliance, Chinese troops did not march in Red Square. As a screamer that rivals the Russian S-500 missile systems, adults in the Beltway may have done the math and concluded Moscow and Beijing may be on the verge of signing secret military protocols, as in the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. The new game of musical chairs is surely bound to leave Eurasian-obsessed Dr. Zbig Grand Chessboard Brzezinski apoplectic. And suddenly, instead of relentless demonization and NATO spewing out Russian aggression every 10 seconds, we have Kerry saying that respecting Minsk II is the only way out in Ukraine, and that he would strongly caution vassal Poroshenko against his bragging on bombing Donetsk airport and environs back into Ukrainian, quote, democracy. The ever level-headed Lavrov, for his part, describing the meeting with Kerry as wonderful, and Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov described the new U.S.-Russian entente as extremely positive. So now the self-described don't-do-stupid-stuff Obama administration at least apparently seems to finally understand that this isolating Russia business is over, and that Moscow simply won't back down from two red lines: no Ukraine in NATO and no chance of popular republics of Donetsk and Lugansk being smashed by Kiev, NATO, or anybody else. Thus, what was really discussed, but not leaked, out of Sochi is how the Obama administration can get some sort of face-saving exit out of the Russian western borderland geopolitical mess it invited on itself in the first place. About those missiles, Ukraine is a failed state now, fully converted into an IMF colony. The EU will never accept it as a member or pay its astronomical bills. The real action for both Washington and Moscow is Iran, and not accidentally the extremely dodgy Wendy Sherman, who has been the chief U.S. negotiator in the P5+1 nuclear talks, was part of Kerry's entourage. A comprehensive deal with Iran cannot be clinched without Moscow's essential collaboration on everything from the disposal of spent nuclear fuel to the swift end of UN sanctions. Iran is a key node in the Chinese-led New Silk Road project, so the real masters of the universe must have also, finally, seen this is all about Eurasia, which inevitably was the real star in the May 9 Victory Day parade. After his pregnant with meaning Moscow stop, where he signed 32 separate deals, Chinese President Xi Jinping went to do deals in Kazakhstan and Belarus. So welcome to the new Silk World Order, from Beijing to Moscow, on high-speed rail, from Shanghai to Almaty, Minsk and beyond, from Central Asia to Western Europe. By now, we all know how this high-speed trade geopolitical journey is unstoppable, spanning the Beijing-led, Moscow-supported Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, AIIB, and the BRICS Development Bank, Central Asia, Mongolia, and Afghanistan, where NATO has just lost a war, are being inexorably pulled into this trade geopolitical orbit covering all of Central, Northern, and Eastern Eurasia. What could be called Greater Asia is already shaping up, not only from Beijing to Moscow, but also from business center Shanghai to gateway to Europe St. Petersburg. It's the natural consequence of a complex process I have been examining for a while now, the marriage of the massive Beijing-led Silk Road economic belt with the Moscow-led Eurasia Economic Union, EEU. Putin described it as, quote, a new level of partnership. The real masters of the universe may have also noted the very close discussions between Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu and the deputy chairman of the Central Military Council of China, General Fan Changlong. Russia and China will conduct naval exercises in the Mediterranean Sea and the Sea of Japan, and will give top priority to their common position regarding U.S. global missile defense. There's the not-so-negligible matter of the Pentagon, quote, discovering China has up to 60 silo-based ICBMs, the CSS-4, capable of targeting almost the whole U.S. except Florida. And last but not least, there's the Russian rollout of the ultra-sophisticated S-500 defensive missile system, which will conclusively protect Russia from a U.S. prompt global strike, PGS. Each S-500 missile can intercept 10 ICBMs at speeds up to 15,480 miles an hour, altitudes of 115 miles, and horizontal range of 2,174 miles. Moscow insists the system will only be operational in 2017. If Russia is able to roll out 10,000 S-500 missiles, they can intercept 100,000 American ICBMs by the time the U.S. has a new White House tenant. Once again, the real masters of the universe seem to have done the math. Can't reduce Russia to ashes. Can't win in the new Silk World Order. Might as well sit down and talk. But hold your geopolitical horses. They might still change their mind.